Snow fell silently over a dark Manhattan street when a lonely billionaire noticed a small girl sleeping beside a broken suitcase. She looked up with tearful eyes and whispered, "Do you know what it feels like to have no one?" In that moment, his powerful world shattered and a new life quietly began. The last light of November dragged itself across Manhattan like a tired ribbon, orange on glass, gold on steel, cold everywhere else. Camden Vale stood at the curb outside a private tower where men in expensive coats talked about numbers like they were prayers. He checked his watch again and again. His driver was late. Late was a word Camden treated like an insult. He adjusted his tie Italian silk navy with a faint sheen and exhaled through his nose as if he could breathe the city into obedience. The investor dinner had gone exactly as planned. He'd smiled at the right moments. He'd crushed the right doubts. He'd closed the right doors. They called him the Frost King in the back channels of finance. Camden didn't correct them. He stared at the empty street, too quiet for Midtown, when he saw movement on the far sidewalk. Something small, almost a mistake. A child. A little girl sat on the concrete as if the city had placed her there like a forgotten prop. Brown hair wine-tangled, a coat too thin for the air, a faded blue dress peeking out beneath it. Her legs swung slightly, feet not touching the ground. In her arms, a worn teddy bear with one ear half detached, like it had survived too many goodbyes. She wasn't crying. That was what made it wrong. Children cry, children reach, children ask. This one just waited. Camden tried to look away. He told himself it wasn't his business. He told himself he'd donated enough money to enough causes to cover the guilt of walking past. But his gaze kept snapping back as if there was a hook in his ribs. He crossed the street before his brain could finish arguing with his feet. His shoes clicked, precise, measured. 1 step, 2 steps. He stopped in front of her. "Hey," he said, voice rougher than he meant. "Are you lost?" The girl lifted her eyes slowly, green bright and too old. She hugged the bear tighter. No fear. Just a calm, careful study of him, like she was deciding whether he was real or just another person who would leave. Camden waited for her to answer. She didn't. The wind moved through the street canyon, cold and sharp, catching the ends of her hair and the frayed threads of her sleeves. In the glow of storefronts, he could see dirt on her cheeks, small smudges like she'd tried to wipe tears away and didn't have a clean place to put them. Camden hated uncertainty. He hated silence that didn't obey. So he reached for what always worked: money. He took out his wallet, sleek leather heavy with certainty, and peeled off bills without counting. 100, another, and another. He held them out like an answer. "Here," he said, crisp. "Get something to eat, get warm." She stared at the money. Then she looked up at his face and something shifted inside her expression, like a door cracked open and light spilled out. Her eyes filled. Not with panic. Not with the kind of crying that asks for help. With loneliness. The kind that lives a long time. "I don't want money," she said, voice small but steady. There was a gentle music to her words, an accent he couldn't place. Camden blinked once, annoyed with the emotion rising in his own throat. She swallowed hard as if speaking cost her something. "I just wanted a dad who loved me." The bills in his hand felt ridiculous, paper pretending to be power. Camden took a half step back as if she'd hit him. For the first time in his adult life, he stared at a problem that didn't have a price tag. His phone buzzed, a meeting reminder, his world trying to drag him back into its clean, predictable lane. Then finally, the black car rolled up to the curb. His driver, Oz, got out fast, apologetic. "Sir, traffic, it doesn't matter." Camden cut in too sharply. His voice sounded wrong in his own ears. Thin, exposed. He shoved the money back into his wallet with fingers that didn't feel steady. "I have to go," he told the girl, and hated himself for saying it. She didn't chase him. That was the worst part. She didn't reach. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just sat there, bare pressed to her chest, watching him like she was used to people walking away. Camden slid into the back seat. "Home," he said. The car pulled away, and still he turned, looking through the rear window. She remained on the sidewalk like a small, stubborn star refusing to go out. The city swallowed her block by block, but her voice stayed. "I just wanted a dad who loved me." 9 words, and Camden Vale, who had built an empire out of control, felt something inside him start to crack. The ride to Fifth Avenue was silent. Oz drove carefully, sensing something off in the air, sensing that his boss had stepped into a kind of weather he couldn't manage with a steering wheel. Camden sat back, suit-perfect jaw-locked eyes fixed on the blur of lights outside. He should have been thinking about Japan's investment terms. He should have been thinking about next quarter's projections. Instead, he saw a thin coat, a teddy bear, green eyes that didn't ask for anything except the one thing he didn't know how to give. The penthouse doors opened with a soft whisper. Warmth, clean lines, art on the walls chosen by experts, furniture chosen for impact, not comfort. It looked like success. It felt like an empty theater after the show ends. Camden tossed his briefcase onto the glass coffee table and went straight to the bar. He poured whiskey amber sharp and drank like it was medicine. It wasn't. He loosened his tie and walked to the window that turned Manhattan into a glittering map. Down there, millions of lives moved like currents. Somewhere in that ocean, a 5-year-old sat on a sidewalk. He could have told himself she'd been picked up. He could have told himself someone kinder, someone better, had done the right thing. But his chest didn't believe it. His phone rang. Marin, his ex-wife, was a name he hadn't seen in months. Then it stopped before he could decide whether to answer. Camden stared at the dark screen, remembering her last words years ago, clean and cruel in their honesty. "You love your numbers more than you could ever love a person." He'd told her feelings were distractions, that love was messy, that children were chaos. She'd left, and he'd called it peace. Now peace tasted like ash. He opened his laptop, tried to drown himself in work. The email subject lines stared back like strangers. He read the same sentence 3 times and understood none of it. He slammed the laptop shut. The silence of the apartment pressed in, thick and expensive. He lay down that night and didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. Not begging, not reaching. Just waiting, like she'd been taught hope was something you did quietly, so it wouldn't disappoint you too loudly. At 3 a.m., he sat up, heart punching his ribs. Why had her words hit like that? He went to the bathroom, turned on the light, and stared at his reflection. 36. A few gray strands at the temples. A face trained into control. Eyes that looked familiar. Because he'd seen that same loneliness every morning. Money hadn't cured it. Power hadn't cured it. He whispered into the mirror like it was a confession. What if she's still there at 5 a.m.? Camden stopped pretending he could ignore it. He got dressed, not in a suit. In jeans, a simple shirt, a wool coat. He left the penthouse like a man sneaking out of his own life. Camden didn't call his assistant. He didn't reschedule. He didn't explain. He just walked out into the early Manhattan cold like he was chasing something he'd dropped years ago, and only now realized mattered. The city was waking up, coffee breath, car horns, hurried shoes. Camden stopped at a deli on the corner, suddenly aware of how little he knew about children. He grabbed fruit, bread still warm in paper, milk, jam, cookies. Too much like overcompensation could patch a hole in the world. The cashier smiled. Big breakfast. Camden nodded without meaning to. Something like that. He carried the bags through the street feeling ridiculous. A man worth billions holding groceries like a penance. When he turned the corner onto the same block, his heartbeat jumped. The sidewalk was empty. No thin coat. no teddy bear, no green eyes. Relief hit first, quick and bright. Then disappointment, heavy and irrational. He walked the stretch anyway, scanning like the ground might tell him where she went. Nothing. Only litter, old receipts, and people flowing past him without a glance. Camden stood still in the middle of the sidewalk, feeling something he didn't have a word for: the strange emptiness of losing someone you never had. He returned to where Oz had parked. "She's gone," Camden said, as if speaking. It made it real. Oz glanced around. "You mean the kid from last night?" Camden didn't answer directly. "Drive." To the office, Camden hesitated, eyes still on the sidewalk. No, not yet. He rode through Midtown with the groceries on the seat beside him like a silent argument. He tried to force logic into place. She was probably picked up. Social services, a relative, someone. But the image of her still sitting there, unmoving, refused to loosen its grip. He made Oz circle twice. Then something in him snapped into decision. "Take me back tomorrow," Camden said. Oz blinked. Tomorrow, Camden's jaw tightened. Yes. Back at the office, Camden moved like a man underwater. Meetings blurred. Voices became noise. Profit charts looked like ice. His CFO asked a question. Camden didn't hear it. All he heard was a child's voice, small but steady. "I just wanted a dad who loved me." That night, he didn't drink whiskey. He sat by the window watching the city breathe, and in his mind, he named her something he didn't understand. Wren. Because she felt like a small bird in winter, fragile, stubborn, alive. And he knew with a certainty that scared him he wasn't done with that sidewalk. Not even close. The next morning, Camden didn't need an alarm. He woke like someone had called his name from another room. He dressed quickly. No tie. No armor. On the way out, Oz stared at the casual clothes like they were a glitch in reality. "You're sure about this, sir?" Camden didn't look back. "Drive." The city was grayer today, the kind of sky that promised rain and didn't apologize. Camden held the grocery bags in his lap, fingers clenched on the handles. What if she wasn't there? What if he'd built this entire storm inside his chest for nothing? He turned onto the block, and there she was, in the exact same spot, as if time had not moved for her. Thin coat, faded blue dress, teddy bear hugged tight. Her hair was messier now, her cheeks paler, the dirt on her face darker in the daylight. Camden stopped walking without realizing it. A man in a suit brushed past him, annoyed. A woman on her phone stepped around him like he was a lamppost. No one stopped for the child. No one slowed down. Camden approached slowly, grocery bags held like a shield. The girl was whispering into her bear's ear, then tilting her head as if listening to a reply. When she looked up and saw Camden, there was no surprise. Not joy. Not fear. Just recognition. Like she'd been waiting for him the way you wait for a bus that's always late, because what else can you do? "Hi," Camden said, softer than the city. "Hi," she answered, so quiet he almost didn't hear. He pointed to the empty space beside her. "Can I sit?" She nodded. Camden sat on the cold sidewalk, jeans touching concrete billionaire knees, inches from grime. He'd sat at tables with presidents. He'd negotiated acquisitions in rooms where the carpet cost more than her coat. And now he was here in the exact place his life had started to tilt. He opened the bag, pulled out an apple. "I brought you something." She stared at the fruit like it was a trick. "It's for you," Camden said quickly. No catch. Her small hand reached out hesitant and took it like it was something sacred. She bit into it, slow, careful. The first hint of a smile flickered across her face. Camden's chest tightened. He watched her eat as if it mattered more than any quarterly report. When she finished, she looked at him again, those green eyes cutting straight through his defenses. "Are you leaving now?" she asked, voice neutral. No accusation, just a question shaped by experience. Camden swallowed. "I'm still here," he said. And for the first time he realized how big those words could be. They sat in silence long enough for the city to keep proving what it was, busy, indifferent, loud, without noticing what mattered. Camden tried to sound normal, like a man who belonged on sidewalks. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl looked down at the bear as if checking whether it was safe to answer. "Wren," she said. The name landed inside Camden like something he'd always known. "I'm Camden," he offered. "Camden," she repeated carefully, testing each syllable like stepping stones. "How old are you?" Wren held up her whole hand. 5 fingers. Then she hugged Mr. Brown again, and him, Camden nodded toward the bear. A shy seriousness came over her face. "This is Mr. Brown. He's 7. Camden blinked. 7. That's pretty old for a bear. "He belonged to my mommy when she was little," Wren said, and her voice changed older, quieter. "Now he takes care of me." The words should not have existed in a 5-year-old's mouth. Camden's throat tightened. He glanced away, pretending to watch traffic. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked. Wren looked down at the sidewalk. "I never had a dad." Camden didn't interrupt. "My mommy got sick," she continued. "She went to heaven." A pause, small, brutal. "I stayed here because I don't have nowhere else." Camden felt something inside him split. Not dramatically, not loudly, like ice cracking under a foot you didn't know was too heavy. "Where did you sleep?" he asked, even though he feared the answer. Wren pointed to the narrow gap between buildings, a slice of darkness, with a piece of cardboard and a torn plastic sheet like a roof. "Mr. Brown doesn't like noise," she said, "so we go there." Quieter. Camden shut his eyes for half a second, fighting the wave that rose in him. A child sleeping in an alley, a child making decisions for a teddy bear's comfort. Camden took out the warm bread and broke it in half. "Do you like bread?" Wren's eyes lit up like someone had turned on a lamp inside her. She nodded. "Yes." She took the piece with both hands and ate like it might disappear if she moved too fast. Camden watched the people passing. No one stopped. No one asked. And Camden understood something that made his stomach twist. Before Wren, he would have been one of the people who didn't look. Wren finished the bread and wiped her mouth with her sleeve. "Are you leaving now?" she asked again. Camden stared at the alley she'd pointed to. Then he looked at her, and a decision formed with terrifying clarity. "No," he said. "You're not sleeping there again." Camden stood up quickly, like if he moved too slowly, his courage would evaporate. "Wait here," he told Wren. She nodded, calm as always, like she didn't expect much anyway. Camden walked to Oz's car, parked nearby, opened the trunk, and pulled out a wool blanket he kept for emergencies, an item he'd never imagined using for this. When he returned, he knelt in front of Wren. The sidewalk was cold beneath his knees. The city rushed around them. A siren wailed far away like a reminder that danger was always nearby. Wren, Camden said, voice careful, "You're not going to sleep out here anymore." She didn't look shocked. She didn't look grateful. She looked ready, like she'd been waiting for life to finally choose her. "Where am I going to sleep?" she asked. "In a warm bed," Camden said, "with blankets and pillows." Wren's eyes flickered to Mr. Brown, and Mr. Brown, Camden added quickly, "He gets pillows too." Her fingers tightened around the bear like it was a test of his promise. Camden held out his hand. Wren stared at it. Then she looked at his face, searching like she could see whether his words had weight. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her. She placed her small hand in his. It was cold. So small. So trusting it hurt. Camden lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she was. Not just physically, like she could be carried away by the wind if no one anchored her. Oz got out of the car and froze, professional mask slipping for a second. "Sir." "Open the door," Camden said, firm. Oz did. Camden settled Wren into the back seat, wrapping the wool blanket around her like a shield. She held Mr. Brown as if he might jump out and run back to the sidewalk. "Home," Camden told Oz, and slowly. Wren watched the car interior with quiet wonder. The leather seats, the soft lights, the silence. "Do you live far?" she asked. "Not too far," Camden said, and it felt like a lie because emotionally he was traveling 1,000 miles. Wren pressed her face toward the window. The city moved past in clean, expensive motion. Camden's phone buzzed again, his assistant, his CFO, his calendar screaming. He ignored it. For the first time in his life, the Empire could wait. Wren yawned, small and sudden, and her eyelids drooped. Her head leaned against the seat. Mr. Brown stayed locked in her arms like a promise she couldn't risk losing. Camden watched her as she fell asleep, really asleep, not the fragile half-sleep of an alley. And something in him softened with a fear that felt like standing on the edge of a new life. He whispered, not to her, not to the driver, almost to himself, "What am I doing?" But his chest answered before his brain could. The right thing. The Fifth Avenue building rose like a monument to distant Dorman marble quiet that cost money. Camden carried Wren in his arms through the lobby. She woke slightly, eyes widening at the chandeliers and the polished floors that reflected her like a second ghostly child. "This is big," she whispered. Camden heard the awe and the fear tangled together. "It's my home," he said gently, and then realized how wrong that sounded because it had never been a home before. Upstairs, the penthouse doors opened into silence. Wren stopped at the threshold, clutching Mr. Brown like armor. Her green eyes scanned the room, art glass, sharp corners, nothing soft enough to trust. Camden suddenly saw his own life through her eyes. A beautiful place built for loneliness. His house manager hovered, startled by the sight of a child. Camden didn't give room for questions. "Prepare the guest room," he said. "Extra blankets and food, something a child eats." He said it like an order, because orders were easier than admitting he had no idea what he was doing. Wren moved like a quiet shadow down the hallway, careful, cautious. She touched nothing. She kept close to Camden's leg like he was the only thing that didn't look too big. The guest room had never been used. A king-size bed sat there like a stage. Camden frowned at it. It looked ridiculous, an ocean for a child. He grabbed extra pillows and arranged them like boundaries. He pulled out the softest blankets he owned and layered them until the bed looked less intimidating. A lamp clicked on warm light, filling the room. Wren walked to the bed and touched the comforter with one finger. Then she looked back at him, eyes wide with disbelief. "Is this all for me?" she asked. Camden's throat tightened so fast it almost hurt. "Yes," he said. "For you, and for Mr. Brown." Wren hugged the bear tighter, and for the first time Camden saw it, a small smile trying to exist. Camden found a clean, oversized t-shirt and offered it like it was a solution. "We'll get you better clothes," he said quickly. "But for now." Wren nodded as if she was used to for now. A bath was a new battle. Camden kept his voice calm, kept his distance, made sure the house manager handled what needed handling, while Camden stayed near the door, speaking softly so she never felt alone. After she ate soup in small, careful spoonfuls, like she didn't trust the world to keep feeding her. When he tucked her in, she held Mr. Brown with both arms. "Good night," Camden said. Wren's eyes fluttered. "Good night, Camden." He left the door slightly open. Then he went to his own room, lay down in a bed that suddenly felt too big, and stared at the ceiling like it was an enemy. Because the real fear wasn't the logistics. The real fear was this: he already cared. Sleep refused Camden like a locked door. He lay there listening, waiting for a cry, a call, a frightened voice. Nothing. Finally, he got up and padded down the hallway, careful, quiet. Wren's door was still ajar. He pushed it open just enough to see. She was asleep, curled around Mr. Brown like the bear was her anchor to reality. Her face in sleep looked younger, soft, innocent, almost normal. Camden swallowed. He stepped into the room and sat in the armchair beside the bed. He didn't know why. He didn't plan it. He just couldn't leave her alone. Hours crawled. The city outside kept shining indifferent and loud in the distance. But in this room there was only the small rhythm of a child breathing, the rise and fall of blankets, the occasional murmur of a dream. At some point, Wren stirred and mumbled something that sounded like "Mommy." Camden leaned forward without thinking. His hand hovered in the air, then stopped. He didn't touch her. He didn't want to startle her. He just stayed close like a quiet guardian. At dawn, pale light slipped into the room. Camden's back ached. His neck was stiff. His suit life had never prepared him for a night in an armchair. But there was a strange peace in his chest. A feeling he hadn't had in years, like he belonged somewhere that wasn't a boardroom. He stood slowly, intending to leave before she woke. That's when he noticed it. Wren moved restlessly under the blankets, her brow furrowed in sleep. Camden stepped closer. He placed the back of his hand near her forehead. Heat. Too much. Panic hit him like a shove. "Wren," he whispered. Her eyes opened, halfway glazed, distant. "I don't feel good," she murmured. Camden's heart raced. He grabbed the thermometer from the bathroom hands, shaking enough that he nearly dropped it. 102.5 degrees Fahrenheit. He stared at the number as if it might change if he glared hard enough. It didn't. He called his private doctor with a voice that didn't sound like him, fast, raw. "Send someone," Camden said. "Now. Please." While he waited, he dampened a cloth and pressed it gently to Wren's forehead. She shivered, then sighed weakly. "Mommy used to do that," she whispered. Camden swallowed hard, eyes burning. "I'm here," he said, though he didn't know if she could hear. The doctor arrived quickly, efficient, calm, gentle. "Mild infection," Dr. Hart Winters said after checking her. "Exposure. Stress. A weakened system." Camden exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since the sidewalk. "Is she going to be okay?" "Yes," the doctor said firmly. "But you need to follow the schedule exactly." Camden nodded like it was a contract, a deal, a promise. When the doctor left, Camden arranged the medicines on the bedside table with precision, setting alarms. Then he sat beside her again. Because this time leaving wasn't even an option. The day became a slow, careful ritual. Cool cloth, water sips, medicine on time, blankets adjusted. Camden canceled every meeting without explanation. The CEO, who never missed a call, let his phone ring until it went silent. Wren drifted in and out, sometimes staring at him with fever-soft eyes like she couldn't believe he was real. Once near afternoon, she whispered, surprised, "You're still here." Camden leaned in, voice low and steady. "Of course I am." He felt how heavy those words were for her, like no one had ever said them and meant them. Outside, clouds darkened. Rain began tapping the windows, gentle but relentless. Camden stayed beside the bed, watching the thermometer like it was a verdict. Late afternoon, the fever began to ease. He touched her forehead and felt the difference, still warm but no longer burning. Wren's breathing softened. Her cheeks faded from red to pink. When she opened her eyes fully, she looked clearer, more present. "Camden," she whispered, voice thin. "I'm here," he said instantly. Wren reached out a small hand, trembling. She touched his sleeve like she was making sure he didn't vanish. "Thank you for not leaving me alone," she whispered. Something inside Camden broke open. He covered her hand with his careful, gentle. "Never," he promised, and his voice shook despite him. "I won't leave you alone." Wren's lips curved into a weak smile before she fell asleep again, this time not feverish but peaceful. Later she woke and drank more water, ate a few spoonfuls of soup. Camden watched like it was the most important business on earth. "Do you want a story?" he asked. Wren's eyes lit up. Mr. Brown wants one too. Camden hesitated. He didn't own children's books. His library was economics and biographies and impressive titles meant for guests. He cleared his throat. "Okay," he said. "Once upon a time," he told Goldilocks, changing his voice for the bears. He improvised, stumbled, then found his rhythm. Wren giggled soft at first, then real. The sound hit Camden like sunlight. She asked for another story. He told Little Red Riding Hood, then The Three Little Pigs. He kept going until his throat was dry and her eyelids drooped. When Mr. Brown slipped from her arms, Camden gently placed the bear back. He dimmed the lamp. Then he sat in the armchair again. Another vigil. But this time he didn't feel trapped. He felt needed. And for a man who had built his life around being untouchable, that need felt like the first honest thing he'd ever earned. 2 weeks later, the penthouse didn't feel like a museum. It felt lived in. Drawings on the refrigerator. A small basket of toys in the corner. A tiny pair of shoes by the door like a quiet miracle. Sunday morning sunlight poured through the windows, bright and warm as if Manhattan had decided to forgive them. Camden stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, awkward, focused, learning like a beginner. Wren sat at the kitchen island, legs swinging, Mr. Brown propped up like a stern supervisor. "Do you think Mr. Brown likes chocolate syrup?" Camden asked. "He likes honey," Wren said seriously. Then she added, "But he says he can try chocolate today." Camden laughed, a real laugh, surprised by how natural it felt. They ate together, syrup on Wren's lips, Camden pretending not to mind the mess. "Is it good?" he asked. Wren nodded vigorously. "You cook better than before." Camden lifted an eyebrow. "Before," she shrugged. "Before, when you didn't cook." He laughed again. Then Wren put her fork down, suddenly serious, in a way that made Camden's chest tighten. "Camden, yes, Wren. Why do you live alone?" The question was simple. It carried the weight of everything. Camden set his fork down slowly. He realized she deserved an honest answer, not a polished one. "It's a long story," he began. Wren looked at him with calm certainty. "We have time." Camden stared at her, the small girl who had slept in an alley, now sitting in his kitchen like she belonged there. He took a breath. "I never knew my dad," he said. "He left before I was born." Wren's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't interrupt. "My mom and I lived in a small apartment. She worked all the time. She got sick when I was 12. Camden's voice caught. "She died when I was 14. Wren's fingers tightened around the edge of the napkin. "I lived with an aunt after that," Camden continued. "She wasn't cruel, just overwhelmed. I learned to be quiet, to be useful, to depend on myself." He paused, surprised by how easily the truth spilled out. "There was a woman," he said softly. "Marin. She wanted a family." Wren's voice came like a whisper. "Did she leave?" Camden nodded once. "Yes. Because I didn't know how to let someone in." Wren lowered her head, thinking. Then she looked up, and the understanding in her green eyes cut through him like a clean blade. "I think you were lonely," she said, "just like me." Camden couldn't answer. He just nodded, throat-tight, eyes burning. A silence formed between them, not empty but full. Two lonely hearts recognizing each other. Then Wren picked up her fork again like she'd given him a gift and didn't want to embarrass him by watching him open it. "Mr. Brown says the pancakes are really good," she declared. Camden smiled, grateful, shaken. Because he knew the truth now, this wasn't temporary. Not in his heart. Camden tried to work from home. It lasted 2 days. His laptop sat open while Wren colored beside him, humming quietly. His phone buzzed with executives and contracts and urgency. But every time Wren looked up, Camden felt like a liar. He couldn't keep her in a guest room and pretend this was a short detour. That morning he canceled every meeting. His assistant nearly choked on the phone. Mr. Vale, German investors are rescheduled, Camden said firm. Today is non-negotiable. He turned to Wren. I have a surprise, he said. Wren's head tilted. A surprise. What's your favorite color? Wren answered instantly. Pink, and blue, and yellow, and green. Camden's mouth lifted. Then we'll need all of those. They went out into the city together. Stores Camden had never entered. Aisles full of softness. Little beds. Lamps shaped like stars. Books with bright covers. Wren moved shyly at first, like she didn't trust the world to let her choose. Then Camden crouched beside her and said the words that changed her posture. It's for you. Choose what you want. Wren blinked hard. Really? Camden nodded. Really? Wren's hand reached for a small canopy bed with pale pink fabric. Her fingers touched it like it might vanish. Camden bought it. She picked a rug soft enough to sit on. Bookshelves low enough for her hands. A nightlight shaped like a moon. Stickers of trees and butterflies. Camden, who used to deliberate over investments for weeks, made decisions fast. Because for once, the stakes felt real. By evening, the guest room was unrecognizable. It was warm, colorful, child-sized, safe. Wren stood in the doorway staring. Her mouth opened slightly like she didn't know how to hold that much happiness. Is this my room? She whispered. Camden nodded, voice rough. Yes. Wren walked in slowly, touching the books, the stuffed animals, the canopy fabric. She turned to Camden, eyes shining. I can sleep here. Every night Camden felt his chest tighten. Yes, he said. Every night. Wren hugged Mr. Brown and spun once, laughter bursting out like she'd been holding it back for years. Then she stopped abruptly, as if fear caught her ankle. But you have to go to work, she said softly. Don't you? Camden froze. Because she wasn't asking about schedules. She was asking whether he was going to disappear. He knelt in front of her. I do have to go back, he admitted. But you won't be alone. I'll make sure of it. Wren studied him. Promise, Camden swallowed. He'd signed billion-dollar contracts with less weight than this. I promise, he said, and I always come back. Wren nodded slowly, like she was learning to believe. And Camden realized the hardest part wasn't buying the room. It was earning her trust, one returned evening at a time. Finding a nanny became Camden's newest obsession. He ran interviews like he was hiring a CFO, credentials, references, temperament, patience. He watched how each candidate reacted to Wren's silence, her caution. Her sudden bursts of fear disguised as questions. Most tried too hard. Some smiled like Wren was a project. One spoke louder, as if volume could create trust. Wren watched them all quietly, Mr. Brown clutched tight. Then Della Dawson arrived, mid-50s, calm eyes, warm hands, the kind of presence that didn't demand attention, but offered it. She knelt at Wren's level without being asked. Hello, Della said softly. You must be Wren. Wren didn't answer. Della didn't push. Instead, Della looked at Mr. Brown with solemn respect. And you, she said to the bear, must be Mr. Brown. Wren's eyes flickered. Della held out her hand to the bear first, not to Wren. May I say hello properly? Wren hesitated, then slowly placed Mr. Brown into Della's hands. Della cradled the worn bear, carefully adjusting the loose ear gently, like handling something precious. Well, Della whispered, you've clearly been protecting her a long time. You've done a very good job. Wren's mouth tightened, as if she was trying not to smile. Camden felt his chest loosen. Della returned Mr. Brown and looked at Wren. I like bears, she said simply. Wren leaned slightly closer to Camden's leg, but she didn't retreat. After Della left, Camden crouched by Wren. What do you think? Wren hugged Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown says, she's okay, Wren announced. Camden exhaled. Then she's okay. The first day Camden went back to the office, he felt a new kind of fear. In the elevator, he almost turned around 3 times. At his desk, he stared at contracts and didn't see words. He called home once, then twice, then 3 times. Della answered the third call with gentle amusement. "She's fine, Mr. Vale," she assured him. "Right now she's drawing. I believe you are wearing a cape." Camden ended his last meeting early and nearly ran home. When the penthouse door opened, he heard it Wren's laughter. Bright, pure, unafraid. For a split second, Camden felt something ridiculous jealousy, like he'd been replaced. Then Wren saw him. Her face lit up. Camden. Her feet thundered down the hallway. She threw herself into his arms with shocking strength. "You came back," she said into his shoulder, as if she needed to confirm the world still worked. Camden held her tight. "Always," he promised. "I always come back." And that night, after stories and lights dimmed, Camden picked up his phone and called his lawyer. Because wanting wasn't enough. He needed to make it permanent. Grant Lasker answered on the third ring, voice groggy. "Camden, it's late. Is something wrong?" Camden stared at the closed door of Wren's room like it could hear him. "I need you to research something," Camden said. Grant exhaled. "Okay. What?" Camden swallowed. The words tasted like fear and hope at the same time. "I want to know what it takes," Camden said, "to legally adopt a child." Silence stretched on the line. Then Grant's voice sharpened into focus. "Camden, are you serious?" Camden's jaw tightened. "I've never been more serious." Grant paused, careful. "We need details. How did the child come into your care?" Camden didn't flinch from the truth. "I found her on the street. She was abandoned." Grant's voice changed, tactical. "Did you contact social services immediately?" Camden closed his eyes. "No." A beat of silence. "That complicates things," Grant said honestly, "but not necessarily fatally. You provided shelter, medical care, stability. I did what I could." Camden snapped, then softened. "I'm doing what I can." Grant's tone gentled. "All right, here's what we do. We start with documentation. We search for any records, birth certificate, medical history, mother's identity." Camden nodded like he could be seen. "Her mother's name is Juniper Hollis. He'd learned it from Wren's quiet answers in the last days." Grant's pen scratched somewhere. "Good. That helps. And I need you to move fast," Camden said. Because I can't lose her," he almost said. Grant finished for him. "Because the system can move her if we don't establish legal footing." Camden's stomach turned. "Tomorrow," Grant continued, "I'll schedule a preliminary home evaluation with a social worker. That gives us leverage." Camden's voice came out low. "Do it." When the call ended, Camden sat in the dark office for a long moment. He wasn't afraid of boardrooms. He wasn't afraid of hostile takeovers. But the thought of Wren being taken away, put into a system that didn't know Mr. Brown's name, didn't know pancakes on Sundays, didn't know how she flinched at sudden sounds. It made his hands shake. He walked to the refrigerator and stared at Wren's drawings, stick figures, holding hands under a sun. In one drawing, the tall figure had a tie. In another, the tall figure had a cape. Wren's handwriting, messy determined, had written one word on the bottom, home. Camden pressed his fingers to the paper, as if touching it could anchor reality. He whispered to the empty room, "I'm going to do this right." Then he looked toward Wren's door, and he added quieter, "Even if it breaks me." The social worker arrived on Thursday. Patricia Harlow, short gray hair, sharp eyes, calm voice that didn't soften truth, but didn't weaponize it either. She spent 2 hours in the penthouse like a person reading a story from the inside. She inspected the child's room, the kitchen, the safety locks. Della helped install the small step stool by the sink, the nightlight shaped like a moon. Then she sat with Camden clipboard poised. "Mr. Vale," Patricia said, "I need to be frank. This is highly unusual. Camden nodded. I know. Standard procedure is to contact social services immediately upon discovering an abandoned minor. Camden's jaw clenched. I understand. Patricia studied him. Why didn't you? Camden's chest tightened. He chose honesty. Because she looked at me, he said quietly, like she expected me to leave. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't hand her over and walk away. Patricia wrote something down, pen steady. Intentions are not the same as ability, she said. Raising a child is sacrifice, patience, emotional availability. Camden met her gaze. I'm prepared. Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly. That's easy to say. I'll need to see consistency. Della brought Wren into the room gently. Wren hovered near Camden, Mr. Brown in her arms. Patricia lowered herself to the child's level. Hello, Wren, Patricia said softly. I'm Patricia. Can I talk to you for a minute? Wren looked at Camden. Camden nodded, slow and reassuring. It's okay. Patricia spoke with Wren privately for a few minutes in the child's room. Camden waited in the hallway, muscles tight like a man waiting for a verdict. When Patricia emerged, her expression was professional, yet something softened in her eyes. She seems bonded to you, Patricia said. Camden exhaled. That bond is important. Patricia continued, but the court will prioritize the child's best interest. We must also determine whether there are living relatives. Camden's stomach tightened. Her mother had no one. Patricia's eyes held a warning. We don't assume. We verify. When she left, Camden stood in the living room staring at the door like it might swing back open with bad news. Grant called that evening. How did it go? He asked. Camden's voice was cautious. I think... Okay. Grant's tone was measured. Patricia Harlow has a solid reputation. If her report is favorable, it helps us. Camden looked at Wren on the rug, building a small block castle for Mr. Brown. Wren glanced up and caught him watching. Her face brightened slightly. Camden felt the fear again, sharp and immediate. Not fear of losing a case, fear of losing her. Because in only weeks, she had become the center of his world. And the world Camden knew didn't hand out miracles for free. Camden's phone rang in the middle of a contract review, but the second he saw Grant Lasker on the screen, his stomach tightened. He answered fast. Talk to me. Grant didn't waste a breath. Camden, we have a complication. The word hit like ice water. What kind? A new voice joined the call, Patricia Harlow, calm official. Mr. Vale, someone has come forward claiming to be a close relative of Wren's mother. Camden's fingers locked around the phone until his knuckles stung. Who? Her sister Patricia said. Sloane Hollis. Maternal aunt. She has documentation, and she's requesting custody. For a moment, the office around Camden blurred, glass walls, skyline power, none of it mattered. An aunt meant blood. Blood meant a courtroom that could erase everything he'd built. The bedtime stories, the pink canopy bed, the way Wren finally slept without flinching. Where was she? Camden forced out when Wren was freezing on a sidewalk. We're investigating, Patricia replied. For now, Wren remains in your care. Camden ended the call and stood so abruptly his chair scraped. Cancel my day, he told his assistant, voice low and dangerous. Now. As he drove home, one thought burned through him like a vow: I will not let them take her. The morning of the hearing arrived under a flat gray Manhattan sky that looked like it had forgotten how to breathe. Camden Vale hadn't slept. He shaved anyway, hands steady only because he forced them to be. Wren stood in her favorite faded blue dress, hair neatly combed, clutching Mr. Brown's so tight, his worn ear bent against her cheek. Della packed water crackers and a spare sweater like they were heading into a storm. Camden crouched in front of Wren. Today we're going to meet a judge, he said softly. He's going to ask if you feel safe, if you're happy. Wren's green eyes searched his face. Will you come back? She whispered. Camden's chest tightened. I'm not leaving you, he promised. Not today, not ever. Outside the courthouse, Grant Lasker waited with a leather briefcase and a calm expression that didn't fool Camden for a second. "She's here," Grant murmured as they climbed the steps. Camden followed his gaze and saw Sloane Hollis near the hallway entrance, early 40s, brown hair like Wren's, dressed plain, but careful. She wasn't smiling. She looked broken. Camden swallowed hard. This wasn't a business battle. This was war for a child's heart. Sloane Hollis stood slowly when the judge asked her to speak. Her hands trembled, fingers twisting together as if she were holding on to something invisible. "Your Honor," she began softly. "My sister Juniper and I stopped speaking years ago. We argued about life, about choices. I moved across the country. Time passed and pride kept us apart." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know she had died. I didn't know there was a little girl." She swallowed hard, blinking away tears. "I found out only a few weeks ago, through someone who finally tracked me down." The courtroom grew quiet. "I didn't come here to hurt anyone." Sloane continued, her eyes briefly meeting Camden's. "I came because Wren is the last piece of my sister left in this world. I just wanted the chance to know her, and to be part of her life." Camden listened, his anger shifting into something heavier and more complicated. This woman wasn't a villain. She looked like someone who had arrived too late to stop a tragedy. Judge Hoffman nodded slowly, then turned to Camden. "Mr. Vale," he said calmly, "tell me why you believe the child should remain with you." Camden stood heart-pounding, knowing every word now carried the weight of Wren's future. Camden rose slowly from his seat. For a moment, the powerful billionaire who negotiated billion-dollar deals felt like the most unprepared man in the room. He glanced at Wren sitting beside Della. The little girl's feet barely touched the floor, her small hands gripping the worn teddy bear like a lifeline. Camden took a breath. "Your Honor." He began, voice steady but quiet. "3 months ago, I found Wren sleeping on a freezing sidewalk behind a closed cafe. She was alone. No coat. No one looking for her." A murmur moved through the courtroom. "I didn't plan to change my life that night," Camden continued. "But when a 5-year-old looks at you and asks if she can stay somewhere warm, you don't walk away." His eyes softened as he looked toward Wren again. "She has a room now. School. People who care about her. But more than that, she has someone who shows up every morning and every night." Camden's voice thickened. "I know I'm not her blood. But every decision I make now starts with the same thought: what's best for Wren." He faced the judge fully. "I'm not asking to own her future," he said quietly. "I'm asking for the chance to protect it." Judge Hoffman leaned back slightly, his fingers folded together as the courtroom fell into a deep, waiting silence. He looked first at Sloane Hollis, then at Camden Vale, weighing the quiet truth behind both of their words. Finally, his gaze moved to the smallest person in the room. "Wren," he said gently, his voice softer than before. "Would you like to come sit here with me for a moment?" Della guided the little girl forward. Wren walked carefully to the front, clutching Mr. Brown against her chest, as if the teddy bear could protect her from the seriousness in the air. The judge smiled kindly. "Do you know why everyone is here today?" Wren nodded a little. "To decide where I belong." "And how do you feel about that?" he asked. The room held its breath. Wren looked back toward Camden. He stood perfectly still, afraid even to blink. Then she turned to the judge again, her small voice trembling but clear. "I like Aunt Sloane," she said softly. "She reminds me of my mom." She paused, hugging the teddy tighter. "But when I wake up scared at night, it's Camden who comes." For a long moment, no one in the courtroom spoke. Judge Hoffman studied Wren's small face, the way she held the worn teddy bear against her chest, like it carried every memory she had left of safety. Then he nodded slowly. "Thank you, Wren," he said gently. You can sit back down now. Della guided her to the bench again, where Camden was still standing, his heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear the rustle of papers in the room. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked toward both adults. This court recognizes the love and sincerity shown by Ms. Hollis, he said calmly. Family ties matter. But the law requires me to place the child where her stability, safety, and emotional well-being are strongest. He paused. In this case, the evidence is clear. Camden held his breath. Mr. Camden Vale has already become the consistent parental figure in Wren's life. Removing her now would cause unnecessary disruption to the stability she has finally found. A quiet ripple moved through the courtroom. Therefore, the judge continued, "This court approves the adoption request." Wren looked up in confusion until Camden knelt and wrapped his arms around her. And for the first time in her life, home was no longer temporary. Did this story move your soul? Share your feelings in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Click the end screen to watch another heartfelt video. See you in the next story.